I'm Jessica Luck. I'm editor of C-VILLE Weekly. So I want to welcome everyone to this C-VILLE live event. This one is really special for us because this is our anniversary. We started this a year ago, and our kickoff launch was with the Film Fest. And the first one was in our office, and we had a live studio audience. But we've graduated, and now we're at the Violet Crown, and we had Bold Rock tasting beforehand. So we're very excited to have these guys and work with them and have you all able to do a Q&A with regional filmmakers and hear from them about the process of how all this works. So, for anyone who doesn't yet know what they're going to see in this week's C-VILLE, you will find the Virginia Film Fest Guide. So it has all the movie times, everything you need to know about what's coming up this week. So to kick it off, we have our moderator is Coy Barefoot, which, as I'm told, everyone knows through radio, TV, Man About Town. Next to him, we have Jody Kilbasa. He's the director of the film festival and vice provost of the arts at UVA.
And contestant number 1.
That's right. Bachelorette number 2 is Wesley Harris. He's the programmer for the film festival. So I'm going to leave it to the experts. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. This is very exciting to really kick off the festival. That's what we're here to do, and you're going to help us do that. The 29th, can you imagine that? I'm just curious, how many of you were here for the first one? Or you were around in Charlottesville, like me, in 1990 for the very first one? A few of us. 29th annual Virginia Film Festival. It is really exciting. And what we're going to do tonight, we're going to have a conversation with Jody and Wesley about some of the, they're going to take us behind the scenes and really put a spotlight on some of the who, what, where, when, some of the sights and sounds that we can look forward to November 3rd through the 6th. When is that, Coy? That's next Thursday. Next Thursday through the following Sunday is when we do this. So I want you to think of this as your perfect escape in the last few days of election madness. You can just check out and come to the film festival and have a wonderful time. And then what we're going to do in the second half of the program tonight, we're going to bring up some of our celebrated and award-winning, Oscar-winning regional filmmakers, have a conversation with them, meet them, find out what they're offering this year in the festival, and then we're going to turn it over to you and hear what any questions you have for any of the folks up here on the panel. So thank you for being here. I want to start by asking Jody and Wesley, let's have both of you respond to this question. Before we get into some of the big names and, you know, Warner Herzog and Shirley MacLaine and some of these big names that we are looking forward to meeting this year, next week. And before we get into some of the big films and the premieres and the events, can you just tell us what this is like for your team? Because for those who don't know, you work on this all year. It's not like you just start in late August, hey, we got to do this film festival thing. We should have a meeting, send out some emails. This is a constant process that goes on every day. They get up, they go to work, and they are totally focused on November. For us, tell me about the process.
Well, sure. And first of all, I want to give a shout out to C-VILLE and thank them for hosting this event tonight and for the publication of this program, which I'm very proud of. When I came here 8 years ago, we had a newspaper program, and one of the first things I said is, I'm not sure this is reaching everybody we need to, and I met with C-VILLE, and they were willing to take this project on, and they've done a beautiful job, and I'm proud of the way it's grown. It's gone from, I think, 36 pages its first year to just under 100 this year. In fact, Wesley just threw it down, and here, listen to that. And the heft of it is impressive, I think. So thank you very much, C-VILLE. We're very, very grateful. There's an urban myth out there sometimes, and I've encountered this for years, that somehow we have finalized the program months ago, and we're just holding on to it, being mean-spirited, that we know everything that's going to happen. Well, that's not true. We just added a film, Jackie, starring Natalie Portman. We found out about it Thursday night. And we hadn't been sitting on our hands about this film. We actually reached out to Fox Searchlight about a month and a half ago and said, gosh, golly, gosh, gee whiz, we would love to screen Jackie with Natalie Portman during the film festival. It hadn't premiered yet at the Toronto Film Festival, so they were just not inclined to really discuss it with us. And suddenly they emailed us last Thursday night and said, what about Jackie? We know you're far along, that you've announced your program, but do you have a space for it in the festival? Well, we made room for it, and we announced it just 48 hours ago. That's how dynamic this process is. But getting back to your question about how does this unfold, every year we start really by traveling out to the Sundance Film Festival, which is in late January in Park City. So Wesley and I go out together, and between us we see between 50 and 60 different films. It's a large part of their program. We don't see everything, because sometimes there's a film that's out there that we know we can get a screener for down the road. But we really try and see different films out there, and it's very rare that we see the same film, although there may be one or two or three crossovers. And that really begins the process for us. And this continues throughout the year. In the past, we've traveled to South by Southwest. We go to the AFI Doc Film Festival, the American Film Institute Documentary Film Festival up in Washington, D.C., the Full Frame Film Festival, which is a documentary film festival in Durham, North Carolina. Wesley in the past has traveled to River Run. And we end this process all the way into September, over Labor Day, by traveling to the Telluride Film Festival, which is a relatively small but very important film festival that premieres a lot of the films that are likely to play into the Academy Award and Golden Globe discussion later on. And so that's in September, and we announce usually the last couple of days of September or the first days of October. So that's how crazy it is, because after that, we're still waiting for the Toronto Film Festival, which happens in mid-September, and the New York Film Festival right around that time as well, to, in many cases, premiere a lot of these important films. And then we have to wait to reach out to the distributors to say, may we screen these important films that are going to be high-profile films that will be released later in late November or December, or in some cases in the new year. There's another process as well. Wesley, we want to take them up to date on the call for entries, which is going on all during this process.
Yes, so there are really three parts to the braid that come together that inform our finding process. One of those is exactly what Jody was just talking about, the going out, scrounging around, sleuthing about to see what is making the rounds on the capital C circuit of the film festival sort of architecture and machine, the industry of it that tours around the globe every year now. The other one that Jody just brought up is that completely blind, open call for submissions to any filmmaker in the world to send their work to us. And that includes someone down the street here in Charlottesville for whom we waive our entry fees as we do for every Virginia resident. And it includes people at the far reaches of the globe submitting their works to us. Shorts and features, documentaries, narratives, experimental animated works. That is the most difficult and exhilarating, perhaps, of those three parts of that braid, because it's the most unknown. We go out, we travel to where Jody just described, and we have a pretty good sense in advance of what we're going to find there. It's pre-curated at that point. It is pre-assembled. It is someone else has already stamped these things as saying, this is worthy to take a look at. Enough of the time they're right. When you have this open, blind call to any filmmaker in the world to submit their works to you, there is no pre-curation, there is no pre-selection. No one has stamped anything on these works. These are coming to us nascent, naked, and then we can give them a platform, or we can help them blossom outward, or we can still come across things that are doing the sort of circuit route, still do come across in that submissions route as well. But it's just the most unknown, and for that reason, it's kind of the most exciting.
And what do you look for? In the past, what can you say that really jumped out at you in that process? For those that just come over the transom, that surprise you, what is it? I'm just curious, what is it you look for in those films?
Something well articulated, fully formed, that I think would resonate well with our audiences here.
that's a lofty, abstract way to look at it, but that's, I think, what any good programmer or curator is looking for, is something that is a clear articulation of a strongly felt thought, emotion, or idea that does the job well and can do a job well for us within our program. Because you flip to the grid in the middle of this thing, you can pinpoint through the checkerboard of is what job is that movie doing in our program? What audience is it serving? Because the job that we're doing is, we're going out, we're finding worthy things, cool things to bring home and share with people. And then what job does it do? Who does it serve? How well does it do it? That's what I'm looking for in all three of those parts of the brain. The third, which I haven't even brought up yet, but especially in that call for entries, that is the easiest. There's nothing easy about it, let me say, first of all, because it's the most emotional goddamn part of my job, is to ruin thousands of people's day and by the click of a button on a single day of the year and just say, no thank you. You poured your soul into this, I can't find a place for it, we can't give a worthy home to it this year, I'm sorry. I imagine it's devastating. It's a little bit devastating for me too, but it is every ounce, let me just say very clearly, every ounce of that emotion is felt. We are never glib about saying no. It's always a draining process to say, you've made something, I can't give it a home, I'm sorry. There's also shit that gets applied, submitted to us too, but most of it is actually not that. The merciful story is that most of it actually is tremendously lovely work that we would love to give a platform to. But the sheer volume, the structure of a 4-day festival, there's only but so much real estate to give. Right. And then the third part of that braid that Jody and I have each spoken a little bit toward is using our place, our home here at the university, our resources in our tremendous advisory board, which is largely made up of UVA alumni who are working at very high levels of the industry, who are producing some of the highest level films of any given year's award season, to go out, bring their own films back home here to Charlottesville, and to help network out throughout the industry and the market at any given year, and to help us attract some of that really high level beacon sort of films of an Oscar season. So those are sort of the three ways that it comes together.
It's nice to know that when you go out to those film festivals around the country that you've pre-selected what you want to see, because I had this image, Jody, of you like a guy at an airport in Concourse D who's late for a plane on Concourse A and just running through the airport. But hopefully it's not like that when you go out to these things.
No, it's not. Going to festivals is very fun. It's also, though, in spite of the fact that you're watching movies all day and all night long, it can be exhausting as well. As glamorous as it may seem to go to Sundance, and I think Kevin can agree with me, a lot of times you're fighting the elements, the snow is blowing in your face, you're waiting for a shuttle to come in 20-degree weather, and then you're standing another hour out in line to get into a film with 500 other people, and then sometimes you just don't get in. Which is really depressing, and then you've missed 3 other films that you might have seen. So it's got its moments, but it's also, it takes a little bit out of you from time to time. One last part of the puzzle I want to share with you in the programming, and we can actually move on, I guess, to the programming itself, is that this process that Wesley described starts to come together usually in mid to late August, and it starts to come into focus. And in Wesley's office, there is a gigantic dry erase board, white dry erase board that goes up about 8 feet tall and continues down the length of the entire wall. And we have an entire grid for every basically hour of the day in every theater laid out. And that's what we consider the war room. And so about 2 weeks out from our announcement, we start adding key parts of the festival in, high-profile films, our opening night, our closing night, our centerpiece film, films that we've already committed to. And then we start pulling from the call for entries, other films that we've confirmed. And it's really an incredible process to try and figure out how many screenings can we fit in there. And there's a whole discussion that we go into as well. Years ago when I came here, I went out in the community and I talked to a lot of people that were involved in the festival. I said, so tell me about the Virginia Film Festival. And they said, and I got this quote all the time, oh, it's that thing UVA does. And I go, ooh, that's not good. That's not good at all. It should be that thing our community does. It should be something that brings everybody together in a celebration of film as an art form, incredible dialogue going through the community. And so we set out to change that. We dropped the theme, I think, which was choking the festival at the time. We decided to focus on the very best cinema in a given year. And what distinguishes this film festival from the other 1,500 plus film festivals in the United States is, of course, we are part of the University of Virginia. We can get some of the top experts on any given subject in the world and have them put the films in context, discuss them, talk about them. But we take that a step further. We reach out into the community because we have a lot of experts not affiliated with the university, and we've asked them to join in those discussions. And then we reach outside of this region to other people. And so there's this very rich dialogue that's been created, and that's the last part of the puzzle for us is once we've figured out what those films are, we have to figure out who's going to introduce those films, who's going to be on the panels, what is going to offer a very rich and engaging program for our community. And then we take those apart and we go, okay, what films connect in this community? What are the social service organizations, the cultural institutions, the clubs, the organizations, the niche organizations that will filter into being interested in the particular topics, and we reach out to them to include them in sort of a community celebration of these topics. So that's what has really sort of launched this festival, and in my opinion, really made it a vital part of Charlottesville's community.
Agreed. So classics, drama, comedy, family specials, documentaries, international offerings, the whole gamut. And it starts 1 week from today, the 29th Annual Film Festival. Jody, let's put the spotlight on some of the films that you and Wesley are most excited about this year, that already have some buzz, that are already selling tickets, that people are already talking about and looking forward to seeing.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm going to start right at the beginning with our opening night film, Loving. This film has been talked about ever since its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. In Toronto, it was incredibly well received. A really powerful, compelling piece. And we have a history with this film because 4 years ago, we screened a documentary called The Loving Story by Nancy Bursky, who's a writer on the project and a producer. And this turned into this narrative film, and this all came out of a New York Times article that she read on the Lovings, and then went out to them. We had, at that time, the two original ACLU lawyers who argued the case on hand for a moderated discussion with Nancy, and the daughter of Mildred Loving, Peggy Loving. It was a very emotional screening, and you know, we're right back 4 years later, opening with this film and having Ruth Nega, who plays Mildred Loving, the director Jeff Nichols, probably best known, you know, for Mud in the last couple of years, we have Nancy Bursky back. We're going to have a moderated conversation with Doug Blackman, who's a UVA professor, but won Pulitzer Prize for Slavery by Another Name. You know, I think that's, again, this level of discussion that we're going to have wrapped around this film is what makes it special. Our centerpiece film, The Promise, a lot of interest in this film, which chronicles the murder by two UVA students 31 or so years ago, both incarcerated today, of the young woman's parents. This is about Elizabeth Haysom and Jens Sorings. And Wesley, why don't you share a little bit about how this film came to you and the story behind this?
Because this is the North American premiere of this
Yes.
film, right?
Yeah, it is indeed. It premiered earlier this year at the Munich Film Festival. That's where the two filmmakers who are actually working journalists are based, Karen Steinberger and her partner. We were actually connected by Sandy Hausman of NPR here originally. And just I mean, it feels silly to use a term like serendipity given the grave subject matter, but it was such a serendipitous film to be coming out along our timeline because it has such a direct tie to the university here, the area of Central Virginia, the murders that happened out in the Lynchburg area. And even as they were still finishing the film, they've recut it 2 or 3 times since that Munich premiere. I've been talking with Karen, the co-director, as she's just been riding the same roller coaster that the rest of us have been, reading these news stories of Jens Soring's appeals to be extradited back home to Germany. The idea being that, well, you can come see the film, but that he may or may not have participated in exactly the way that has been told thus far, and the idea that if he were to be extradited home to Germany, he could finish out a sentence in about 5 or 7 years, rather than rotting in a jail cell for 3 decades like he's been doing in Virginia ever since. So we will be bringing the co-director in from Munich for this screening. Sandy Hausman will be moderating the post-screening discussion. We will have Jens Soring's lawyer. We will have the former assistant district attorney of Virginia on that panel, and we will also have one of the investigators on that panel. It will be incredibly unique. It'll be it'll be the best and the worst kind of homecoming for this particular story. And after our screening, it's going on to screen at the Denver International Film Festival, Doc NYC. It's going to have a lot of life and a lot of legs to it after it premieres here at its North American premiere at the Paramount Theater. So it's a less obvious way to craft a centerpiece film screening, but I think it's absolutely the perfect film for it this year. That
What
is
is
Saturday,
the name of the film?
The Promise. And it's Saturday, November 5th at the Paramount at 7:30. You got it? And Loving is at the Paramount Thursday night at 7, November 3rd.
You know, and we don't have too much time, so I'm going to power through some of these titles that I think are impressive and of tremendous interest. The closing night film is La La Land, and this is Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, and it is a loving testament to old-time Hollywood musicals. It's very reminiscent of Singing in the Rain. They're wildly charming in this performance. It's by the director Damien Chazelle, who did Whiplash a couple of years ago, and it's just extraordinary. I saw it at Telluride. I was up at the Middleburg Film Festival a week ago to see it. It's just a lot of fun, and I think people will absolutely love this film. We're also screening opposite it Lion, which is based on a novel that is out now and based on a true story of a young Indian boy played ultimately as he's older by Dev Patel, who is separated from his parents in a tiny Indian community. He doesn't know his parents' last name, he doesn't know the name of the town, and he's locked in a train and ends up 1,000+ miles away in Calcutta and ends up on the streets of Calcutta as a 5-year-old. And he, fortunately for him, ends up in an adoption agency, is adopted by a Tasmanian couple, and finds himself on the other side, you know, of the world, away from India. And as he grows up and matures and goes to college, he always longs to reconnect with his family and goes in search of that town on Google Earth, only remembering what the train station looked like and 2 landmarks, a dam and a water tower that were next to that station. So you can imagine this process. So really incredibly powerful and moving story. We just added Jackie, you know, as I mentioned, to the festival on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. And everybody's talking about Natalie Portman's performance in this film. I'm certain she will be nominated for an Academy Award. That is not in your program because we just found out last week and the program was already at the printer. But that's part of the dynamic kind of change that we encounter all the time, adding in additional guest artists, additional films. You know, Wesley, you know, I think that you're ultimately incredibly familiar with our international program and a number of the Oscar or to-be Oscar nominees in that program. You want to talk for a moment about some of those?
Sure, and then I know we will not pull our filmmakers in pretty soon as well, but just to speak broadly about that, we actually have 7 of the 7 films that have been nominated by their respective countries to be considered for the Best Foreign Language category at the upcoming 89th Academy Awards. Some of those you may have heard of The Other Ways, the new film by Paul Verhoeven starring Isabelle Huppert is Elle, which has gotten a lot of press and has played very well so far. The film Fire at Sea by Gianfranco Rossi is Italy's entry into the upcoming Academy Awards. As I Open My Eyes from Tunisia actually ended up being a surprise addition to that list because we already had the film programmed. And then a couple of weeks later, Tunisia changed its mind about which film it wanted to enter into the Academy Awards. They switched it from, I forget what exactly, honestly, to that film we already had programmed, As I Open My Eyes. But even beyond the ones that have been sort of pre-curated and stamped by their respective countries. We have a tremendously strong international program this year to include the newest production from Studio Ghibli, the animated feature film The Red Turtle, which is a completely dialogue-free feature film, and it's the first international co-production. And it's by a Dutch director with the amazing house that Miyazaki built at Studio Ghibli. So we're honored to be able to show that film alongside a number of just we have a sidebar of films exploring the current migration crisis in Europe. One of the films in that, Fire at Sea, I already mentioned, is sort of the cornerstone of it. But other films include Memories of Gehenna, The Messengers, Hope. These are films that have, in a couple of cases, not screened in North America before. They're sort of on the independent circuit, even just within Europe, that aren't big blockbusters, but they're exploring the human crisis that is happening as North Africa tries to find a home in Southern Europe, and a lot of crisscrossing vice versa iterations of that. That came about with through a collaboration with Columbia University and a French filmmaker who was curating a program there that we were lucky enough to link arms with and bring some version of that program home here to Charlottesville. So there are a lot of ways, a lot of windows, a lot of routes into a lot of different worlds through the program this year that I would really encourage you to just take 5 or 10 minutes, flip through this thing, throw a dart, see what you might find. There's going to be some less obvious stuff in there that is worth taking a chance on.
And Jody, really quick, Saturday afternoon at 3 at UVA's Culver Theater, we're going to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the animated classic Beauty and the Beast, right? We're
Yes.
going to be doing that here at the film festival.
Yeah, and this is a different version. This is the version, it's a work in progress that was shown one time, 25 years ago at the New York Film Festival. And just to take you through what this is, it will open with the artist renderings, the pencil drawings of the characters, and the soundtrack is laid underneath, and you'll hear the characters' voices and the dialogue. But that will go on for 3 or 4 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom, it will burst into live colored animation, and it's extraordinary. We're fortunate to have Don Hahn, who is responsible for reviving the Disney animation shop with Beauty and the Beast, which remains the only feature-length animated film ever nominated for Best Picture, which it was in 1991. And also brought us Aladdin and The Lion King, and he'll be on hand to discuss this along with Paige O'Hara, who's the voice of Belle. Paige is a dear friend, and I was actually at the premiere of Beauty and the Beast 25 years ago out in Hollywood, and I know the process. She was a Broadway star, and they hired her to do this because Disney was moving to doing true musicals, Broadway-style musicals in animation, so they needed someone who really had the chops to do that. And the artists worked with her for 3 years. So those are Paige's eyes, and those are that's Paige's nose, and her features that are captured in the drawings of Belle. That's how the artists work. You'd think afterwards that they would just draw it and then the artist would lay the soundtracks in. It's not that way at all. So Paige worked on that film for 3 years. She'll be there to talk about that with the UVA professor Carmenita Higginbotham, who's an expert on Disney, was featured on The American Experience and The Life of Walt Disney, most recently on television. So that's a really different way of looking at animation as well.
Let's talk about some of the stars who will be at this year's festival. Since the very beginning, this festival has always attracted some big names, whether directors, screenwriters, actors. Who's on your short list that you're looking at that you're really excited that's going to be here?
I mean, we have a constellation of 3 of the most remarkable artists in the history of film. I mean, it's just the way it is. They're icons. Shirley MacLaine, Liv Ullmann, and Werner Herzog. And, you know, you asked about process earlier. We, for 3 years in a row, have asked all 3 of them to come, and they decided to come the same year. So we have a wealth of riches. It's true, every year, you know, I talk to Wes and I say, hey, let's get that ask out to Werner, let's get that ask out to Liv, and let's get that ask out to Shirley. And this is the year that it just came together. And, you know, we are so fortunate to bring in Michael Barker, who's the head of Sony Pictures Classics. That company has had 159 films nominated for Academy Awards, so they've got good taste. And he's going to be their moderator. moderating that conversation with Liv Ullman. Shirley's coming in with Bob Ghazali, who's the head of the American Film Institute. He's the president and was the very first director of the Virginia Film Festival, tapped as a just graduated UVA student and helmed it for several years before moving on, obviously, to bigger and better things there. And he's bringing Shirley in. AFI has done a tribute before, so she'll be in good hands with him introducing. And then, Wesley, why don't you talk a little bit about what the plans are for Werner?
Certainly. So I'm hugely thrilled this year that Werner Herzog will be coming in. He's doing a lot of work for us, spending a lot of time here during the festival. He'll be presenting 2 of his films. The first film of his that I ever saw was The Enigma of Caspar Hauser, which is a deep cut, and it brought a smile to his face when I suggested that deep cut to him. So it's as he described it, it is out of his nucleus of known movies, of what is popularly recognized and enjoyed. So we're going to be doing that on Thursday night. Friday night we will be showing his new documentary, Into the Inferno, which is his tour around the globe with the volcanologist Clive Oppenheimer of active volcanoes and the communities that have popped up around them. He'll be doing an interdisciplinary master class at UVA, for which at least 2 of our filmmakers who are present here tonight have been instrumental, and I hope that we can get to them very shortly, in crafting together, making use of such a unique mind, such a violently stubborn artistic spirit, who's coming to share his time with students and fellow artists and our audiences here at the festival. And then on the Saturday of the festival, he and I will be sitting over on the Paramount stage for a conversation with Werner Herzog. And that will be an event of something of 3 acts, the beginning of which I've convinced him to present a series of proper presented readings from the stage of excerpted works of literature, both of his own, some from his required reading list from his underground film school that he suggests any aspiring filmmaker to enjoy with. My mother has helped me identify a couple passages from the Aeneid that I might make him read. He'll be reading from J.A. Baker's The Peregrine. J.A. Pennybaker's also coming to the festival this year, by the way.
Well, don't give away the entire program.
Well, I think we want him to know about it at this point. We're a damn week out. He'll be reading from his own memoirs, from shooting Fitzcarraldo and his mentorship with Lotte Eisner, the Virgil's, the Georgics, some Icelandic sagas, sort of disrupting this sort of more recent trend of turning Werner Herzog into a meme where he's just a voice who's known as, oh, he's the guy that did that funny reading of the children's But Go the Fuck to Sleep. That guy who appeared on Rick and Morty. Oh yeah, robbing that, taking the things that are valuable from that and putting it back to work in a way that he at least so far seems very enthused by. That will then transition to the 2 of us having a conversation seated on the stage, and then we will open it up to an audience conversation on that Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. at the Paramount Theater.
So if there was ever any doubt that the Virginia Film Festival was the nation's really smart film festival, let that be put to rest after that event, certainly. And a personal plug, next Friday night at 6:45 at UVA's Culver Theater, I will be there to moderate a conversation with Virginia's own Danny McBride and his co-creator Jody Hill, who are the 2 guys behind HBO's Vice Principals. Anybody a fan? I certainly am. It's absolutely brilliant. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it really is brilliant. And they'll be here to talk about that. Anybody else we want to...
And Life Animated.
Life Animated, yes. I'll also be moderating a conversation on Sunday at 4, November 6th at St. Anne's Belfield. Life Animated is a new documentary with Ron Suskind about his family and his son who was diagnosed with autism, and how they discovered that his son learned to connect with the people around him through these Disney animated films, through the dialogue, through the characters, through the actions. And as the father of a son diagnosed with autism, I can tell you that's
that really does happen, more often than you would think, that you can find this common space with your child while you're both watching a cartoon or a story or a funny YouTube video. And I can't tell you how many belly laughs that Whitman and I have shared over some silly YouTube video. So I'm really looking forward to that. I will just try not to cry when I'm there, because it's obviously hits very, very close to home. But I'm excited, and I hope you can join us there for that. Do we want to bring up the filmmakers?
I think we should.
Yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely.
We have 4 award-winning filmmakers with us in the audience, and we want to ask them to please join us up here so they can share with you what they have planned for this year's festival. And we will slide down and let them take a seat. Come on up.
As they're joining us, I want to also give a thank you and a shout out to Bull Rock for their incredible tasting as well. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, and again, by the Crown, the C-VILLE Weekly, and of course, the University of Virginia, which sponsors the film festival.
So we've got Kevin Everson, Lydia Moyer, Paul Wagner, and Jeremy Goldstein joining us.
So Jeremy, let me start with you. Jeremy Goldstein. Sunday, November 6th at 7 p.m. at St. Anne's Belfield, we're going to share something called Hot Air. Tell us about it.
Sure. Hot Air is a film that I co-wrote with my film partner Derek Sieg, who directed the film, and I produced it. Derek, unfortunately, is under the weather and couldn't be here. We just had our world premiere less than 2 weeks ago at the Austin Film Festival, where we took home the jury prize for Best Feature Film Comedy. It's been a labor of love. I would say Jody and Wes probably know as well as anyone. I just have to say real quick, being a filmmaker here in Virginia is a really special thing, to have the resources that we have in the Virginia Film Festival, not just as a festival, but in these 2 individuals especially. I think Wes has probably seen about 19 different iterations of the film, and has provided some critical feedback to make it as good as it is. And Jody, 2 years ago when we had a very first cut, I think it was 3 or 4 days before the film festival, came in, his phone buzzing every 20 seconds, and turned it off and watched the film and gave us incredible feedback and allowed us to do a private screening during the film festival and made this all happen within 24 hours of the festival going on. So I have to thank both of you publicly, and I know I speak for Derek as well. Thank you so much. That film, Hot Air, plays Sunday, 7 p.m. at St. Anne's Belfield. And the other thing that I'm involved with this year is something that I've done before, which is the Adrenaline Film Festival as a mentor. If you're not familiar with the Adrenaline Film Festival, it's a 72-hour film mini festival within the Virginia Film Festival. It starts on Wednesday. There's 12 teams, usually young people from high school or Lighthouse, which is the nonprofit school here that teaches young people storytelling through film. There's 12 teams of 3. They concept, they pitch, they cast, they go shoot it, they edit, and then they premiere on Saturday, 9 p.m. at Colbert Theater. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. And that's a lot of fun. And it's really fun to see these young voices scramble and find themselves within the 72-hour period.
Jeremy, share with us if you can.
Sure.
Take us to the making of Hot Air, and share with us perhaps one absolutely unforgettable moment in the process.
We were, sure. I mean, the whole thing is sort of unforgettable, and in wonderful ways, and in, making independent films can break your heart 19 different ways. One of the things that will resonate here in Virginia, we have a character named Lincoln Beachy who was going to be played by Dave Matthews. And he's an old-timey character, so he has a very specific suit that he wears. He dropped out about 3 days prior to shooting, and we didn't have anyone, and we had a suit that we couldn't tailor, so we had to cast someone who fit the suit. Luckily, one of our leads, Jerry Burns, knew someone named Gary Cole, who's a great actor, who's on Veep, an Emmy Award winner. Um, happened to fit the suit and got on a plane the next day and was incredible in that role. And so we're very thankful for that.
The very definition of serendipity, and we
Definitely.
yeah. Pass the mic down to Paul. Paul Wagner, of course, is an Academy Award-winning filmmaker for Stone Carvers. And at this year's film festival, you will have the privilege to see what is being hailed as the spiritual sequel to Stone Carvers. And that, of course, is Good Work, Masters of the Building Arts. Paul, tell us about this picture.
Well, this is, it's a little bit of a joke that we call it a sequel. It's been a long time since we produced the Stone Carvers, which won an Academy Award in the mid-'80s. So long ago, I can't even remember what year it was. But this film, it's a sequel in the sense that it's similar in subject matter, and I'm collaborating on the film with an old friend who I produced the Stone Carvers with. Her name is Marjorie Hunt. She was then and still is a folklorist at the Smithsonian Institution. And in fact, I'm just back, we just showed the film, kind of the Smithsonian showing for the first time last night, which was great. And but actually the screening, it occurs to me, the screening with the Virginia Film Festival is the world premiere in terms of a public screening.
Oh, great.
So we're excited. We're always excited to have a film at the Virginia Film Festival. And I've had a bunch. I've lost count and lost track, but at least 7 or 8.
More
I
on
think.
umpteen.
Yeah, right. It's a great festival, and I have to say it's a great festival. The kinds of films that I make and that I make with my collaborators. Just as an example, this film, Good Work, Masters of the Building Arts, is, it includes, it's portraits, kind of a group portrait of master craftsmen across America. An adobe builder from New Mexico, terracotta workers from Northern California, a Yankee stone carver from Providence, Rhode Island. There's a metal craftsman from Virginia, actually. And one of the craftspeople actually connects with the story at the university of the restoration of the Rotunda, which has been, I'm sure all of us are aware of that. It's now finished, and the timing is great for us because one of the companies that worked on that is a company run by a man named John Canning. And what he does is decorative painting. He's one of the characters in our film. If you've been to Grand Central Station in New York and seen the constellations on the ceiling of the restored Grand Central Station, John Canning painted those, okay, by hand over several years. I mean, this is the level of the people in the film. These are all master craftsmen in different building arts, including, in this case, John Canning and his daughter, who's also in the film. John will be here with us for the screening of the film. And it's just great timing because of the dovetailing with the restoration of the Rotunda, on which he was a little bit involved. And the panel's being moderated by Sarita Herman, who is on staff at the university involved with the historic preservation program there. And Marjorie, my collaborator from the Smithsonian, will be down. So I think it's a pretty good example of documentary film programming at the festival, the way the resources of the university can be tapped to really enrich it. I'm totally excited about this. I saw John last night, John Canning, and he's excited about it. It's, you know, it's one of several films we've shown, but typical in the way that we've been able to draw on the resources of the university. We're thankful to Jody and Wes for that.
Paul, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment just to ask you this question while we're here. Besides being good at finding money, besides being good at surrounding yourself with talented people, but look back on your career and just take a moment to reflect on what's the secret to a good film project? What do you look at and look for in a project and say, this will work? Or do you just never really know as you're going through it and just hoping?
Well, you don't really know, but I'll make up something. How about that? Yeah, I mean, I do always come down to, you know, passion for the story being kind of the core element. I think that's the thing that carries over in narrative film. You know, I've done a little bit of narrative work. It certainly was true in my experience there, but it's also true in documentary. comes down to people. You know, on almost all my documentaries, I've collaborated with friends or experts or people who know the subject matter, and I tap into their passion. Usually it starts with their passion for the subject and for the story. In this case, Marjorie, who's an old friend, you know, going back to the Stonecarver days. You know, this is just her life work that she's been involved in, and to be able to tap in to her passion for it, and my shared passion for it, and the passion of these people on camera in the film, to me, that's what makes the film work.
The premiere of Good Works, Masters of the Building Arts, will be next Saturday, November 5th, here in this building at 1 p.m. So go to Downtown Mall, have a good lunch, and then come over here. Lydia. Lydia Moyer is a professor of film at the University of Virginia and a film essayist, and her works will be showcased in the festival this year at the Vinegar Hill Theater, Saturday afternoon, before you go get that lunch, at 11. Lydia, tell us about what you have in store for everybody this year.
Well, I should qualify that and say I'm a former film essayist. I had something at the festival last year that took me 8 years to make, and in the year and a half since I finished that, I've made so that piece was an hour long, and in the year and a half since then, I've made an hour's worth of shorts, but not one of them is an essay. So I have a program of shorts that are all experimental. A few of them, think about this now, at least one of them is an experimental documentary, so based on research about a true story. And many of the rest of them are just experimental. They don't really have a documentary quality to them. So I'm sort of, and a lot of them will be, probably half of them will never have been shown before anywhere. So half of them will be premieres, and most of them haven't been shown in the U.S. If they've been shown, they've been shown in Europe because of the kind of work that they are. So yeah, so it's exciting for me to be kind of going in a new direction. 8 years is a long time, and I should say I work experimentally, so I don't work with a crew. I did everything myself on that film, so it was really exciting to finish that.
So just to flesh out experimental. Do you experiment with story structure, technique? What is it? What do you particularly like to experiment with?
Well, that's a good question. Experimental is kind of a catch-all term, which I guess is what you're asking me to flesh out. So when I worked on the essay film, I thought of it as an experimental documentary because there were no interviews, there were no talking heads. It was a voiceover I wrote, it was my voice, and there were no people in it, even though they were stories about people. So it's sort of not working with the film conventions that we're used to seeing in the cinema. In fact, I did not go to film school, and I'm not really a film professor. I teach in the art department, and I teach animation, experimental animation, and experimental video, which has a different history than film. So I don't really align my work with the history of cinema, but this gets kind of very hair-splitting for people who aren't especially interested in this. So when I think of experimental work, I think of work that's playing with moving images in a way that's not necessarily cinematic and not necessarily within the conventions that we're all used to.
Good stuff. And that will be, again, next Saturday at 11 at the Vinegar Hill Theater. And Kevin Everson's professor of cinematography at the University of Virginia.
Yeah.
And his works, a collection of short films, will be shown here at the Violet Crown next Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and I always like to thank Wes and Jody, because it seems like every year they kind of carve out a nice little time for me to show either. I make like a bunch of films a year, like maybe 12 or so, and so I usually have a feature or shorts. And the last couple of years I've been having like a program of Swedish shorts, and in this particular Swedish shorts film, two of them are done in collaboration with Professor Claudrina Earl, who teaches history and African American studies. And we've been making films about the history of African Americans at the University of Virginia. And these particular films are about the history of beginnings of scholarship athletes at the University of Virginia. And then I got commissioned from the city of Philadelphia to make a film, but I ended up making about 4 films about the 100th anniversary of the Great Black Migration to Philadelphia.
And then 3 of the films in the program are about that. And then there's another film about like UFO sightings in my hometown. So this kind of a hodgepodge of what I do. And I actually can consider stuff I do so-called experimental too as well, because some of the stuff is either made up or actually from real stories, but then don't take a kind of traditional trajectory line of like actual cinema.
So, yeah, go right ahead.
So I just want to interject for a second. Kevin is being a little too modest in saying that we carve out a space for him every year. For those of you who do not know, we only live vicariously following Kevin as he goes to the Rotterdam Film Festival to exhibit his films, up to New York, over to Berlin, over to Sundance, and so many of the very best and most celebrated film festivals around the world where he is constantly coveted to screen his work over there. So, yeah, we're happy to carve out a space for you every year.
Thanks. But I mean, it's always a good kind of ground to show, and then once the audience is here, have been fantastic and stuff like that. And then the film festival's been really generous to the community.
Can I just ask you, with all the works that you do through a normal year, when are you editing? When do you sleep? What's a day like?
Never, just keep grinding, I guess. That's pretty much it. But I don't know, you just kind of figure out a pace of stuff. And then, I didn't go to film school as well. I went to art school, and actually, I am a trained like fine art photographer. And then in the kind of art world, you do have to have a body of work a year. So I always like to make several films to kind of see how I'm going and see how my trajectory is, so to speak. So that just kind of adds to it, to making all these films. But I have all these like crazy ideas.
As you look back on your own body of work, what has surprised you the most about the evolution of that work?
No, I'm surprised somebody could sit through and, I'm just like surprised people like actually, last year we sold out the place and I was like shocked because, again, it's a different way of like, the way me and like Professor Moyer has structured our films. The audience has a different kind of set of patience they're going to go through them, so to speak, I think. So it's not just, 3-act play. There's all these kind of elements that come up and stuff. So I'm always surprised and flattered that people can kind of see stuff.
Whatever. What I think is intriguing about your work is like so the term you use for the workspace that you bring your students into in Ruffin is.
Oh yeah, we call it the gutter. Yeah.
Or the factory, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's what you call both things, and that kind of speaks to and you're talking about the sort of what otherwise might be a tedium of sitting down through a long, onerous, big process, but that big, onerous process of creating all that much stuff a year to make an 8-hour long, work shift long film.
Yeah, and and then I have 2 films that are exactly 480 minutes long. Without any breaks. But also, too, I think in the program, you guys are showing the principal. Vice principals, right? Yeah. So lately, you go to the film festivals, or Berlin, or even film festival in the United States, they're showing like 6 hours of episodes of shows. Like I saw Better Call Saul in Berlin last year. They showed like 4 hours of that. So then I think our viewership has changed too as well. So either experimental or, where people watch all kinds of stuff. So I think, so it's I like how the film festival is actually understanding not only the films they get, but also how the audience kind of digest them too. So I think it's always a changing dynamic.
So you're somewhere in between vice principals and Frederick Wiseman or something like that now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I'm like the tension. You're in between the two, whatever, yeah, so to speak.
So, but look, these are 4 of the most amazing filmmakers that you can encounter in our program this year. There are 4 of about 150. And all they had to do was walk over here tonight. This is where we live. This is the kind of people we're surrounded by. This is the luxury we have of living in a town with this sort of resources, of having these people as our neighbors. These are 4 of a good number, actually, in this town who we're celebrating and showcasing this year. And they're bringing their work around the world. We're lucky enough to be giving a platform to and a spotlight on them this year. So I just want to thank you guys for coming out tonight because you're a lot more interesting than me. So just raise your hand if you have a quick question for anybody on the panel or any question about the festival this year itself. I'm sure everybody has a great question. Yes, ma'am.
So you said you had some late add-ons. Where can we find that? It's not the program.
Okay, well, they're not, everything's in the program except, with the exception of this film Jackie, which has been added on. This stars Natalie Portman about Jackie Kennedy just before, during, and after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And that has been added on Sunday morning at 11 a.m., November 6th, at the Paramount Theater. But that is on our website, and you can get tickets at our box office right here at the Violet Crown, which will be open tomorrow from noon to 6. But everything else is in our program, and everything is on the website. One other thing I might add, if you saw anything that intrigued you this evening, this really does take our entire community to put this on, and we try and engage everybody. So but don't just keep it to yourself, share it out there with your friends, encourage them to come down and experience the festival. I can't tell you how many times I've bumped into people and they go, oh yeah, that festival, man, it's caught fire, everybody goes to that. I've never been. It drives me crazy. So, part of what we're trying to do is we're trying to get every theater full for every artist that we bring in, so that they go out and they spread the word about this remarkable festival. And I will say this year, and I don't mean this to come from any kind of arrogant standpoint, but I would take this year's program that we have and the entire compilation of artists that we have and put it up against almost any film festival in the country right now. It's an extraordinary lineup of guest artists and films. And it's right here in Charlottesville, and it's very accessible. And I will tell you, it's a heck of a lot easier to see films here in Charlottesville than it is at Sundance or some of these other major festivals. So thank all of you, and I'd like to thank, again, the Violet Crown for being such a great house for us to screen in as well. And I'll turn it back to you.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Somebody's got a question. What a great opportunity to ask a question. Yes, in the middle.
Jody touched briefly on the fact that the festival used to encompass a theme, and I remember going in those days, and some of the films were a stretch to fit into those themes, I thought. And I'm just wondering, was that unique to this festival, or is that a thing festivals did back then, or?
I wouldn't say it's entirely unique to this festival. There are certainly festivals out there that are themed, but I think this idea of changing the theme every year was pretty unique here. And honestly, I kind of think it was a little bit of an academic artifice in which they could develop a theme as the year goes on. Here's my problem with it. When I came in, I reviewed past programs that had been done, and I also looked at attendance. Some years attendance would swell based on, boy, did they choose an interesting theme, and other years it was depressed. The year before I came in, it was very depressed. We had 11,000 people attend. Last year we had 32,000 people attend. That's the kind of festival that I like, and I like the kind of festival in which people are excited, engaged, celebrating the art, that there's an incredible interchange with the artists, and that there are butts and seats. So that's something I really dig. I think that what concerned me is that if you choose that theme in January, the whole world can change 9 months later. Think about that. A child could be born in 9 months. The Arab Spring could happen. The first African American president could be elected. You could have a terribly contentious election going on like we have at the moment going on. You could have the financial meltdown. You could have a tsunami. There's so many things that could happen that would render that theme less relevant at the moment 9 months later. So I don't love that idea of an overarching theme. Instead, we've been able to explore a much wider variety of themes within the context of a larger festival that takes a look at the very best in cinema in a given year. And we still screen archival films, particularly when we can bring in people that are really important with them, or we get a stunning new print like the Ram that we're screening during the festival. So I think it still allows us to explore a wide variety.
Any other questions? Yes.
You said 32,000 last year. How was that counted? I went to 15 films.
So you count as 15 attendances, just like they do in the major leagues. So seriously, they announce attendance at an individual football game. Sadly, these days for the Cavaliers, maybe they're around 30,000. But they total attendance for the season is that accumulated for each game, and it's the same thing for us. So you count 15 times. So that may be 12,000 people or 15,000 people. Some who see 2 or 3 or 4 films, and others who see 1 during the festival. But that all counts, and that's pretty standard across the board for festivals.
want to ask a real quick question about
Thank
tickets.
you for seeing 15 films.
Yeah. Round of applause, there you go. Getting tickets for these events, what's the process? They should go out right now, right? I mean, it's,
Well, yeah, I think, I'm gonna say, yeah, I should take that, sorry, thank you. Back in the old days, I think that the attendance wasn't as great, and you could kind of just go the day of. I would not suggest that now. I think that we already have over 15 films that are sold out. Now, what sold out means is that advance tickets are gone. There are always a few held back for emergency circumstances, filmmakers guess, whatever the case may be, that we then release the day of the screening. So come on down. There's a strong possibility that, you can wait in line and still get into a screening that you really, really want to see. But I would encourage you, go online tonight at virginiafilmfestival.org. It's a really easy website to understand and navigate, or go down directly to the box office here at the Violet Crown or on the grounds of the University of Virginia, the Betsy and John Castine Arts grounds at the UVA Arts box office, and get your tickets in person.
great. We got time for one more. Yes.
So if the film's at Vinegar Hill or it's Cold River, you can go to that, if you have to, that day, you can go to that venue and get the ticket.
Come here first, okay, to this main box office about,
What is it, just about an hour before?
So if advance tickets are sold out 1 hour before, actually, don't do that. Go to the actual venue, the specific venue. It's cash and check only. But so say it's out at St. Anne's Belfield, where we're using as a venue for the first time this year. If there's a screening for which advance tickets are sold out, starting 1 hour prior to that start time, cash and check tickets will be sold, anything remaining at that door at that venue for a waitlist line.
Yes.
Last question, could everyone on the panel tell us one film that they're excited to see that might not be on our radar already?
You start, Colby. Go next, man.
Well, if it's not on your radar already, I've already mentioned it. I'm really excited about Life Animated. I can't wait. I'm also very excited about Loving, but we've mentioned that. I cannot wait to see that.
I think it would be Jackie, which neither Wes or I have seen because we just got it and we haven't been allowed by the studio to screen it in advance. So that would be that film. Yes, but the one who did Naruto, Pablo Naruto.
yeah.
I'm going to mention two because I can. One of them being, George briefly mentioned the fact that we're showing a brand new 4K restoration of Akira Kurosawa's Ran on the Friday afternoon at the Paramount Theater giant screen. His 1985 reimagining of King Lear. It's late period Kurosawa. It is overwhelmingly aesthetically. It is gorgeous. It is giant primary colors bouncing around on the biggest screen in town. It's long, so carve out an afternoon for it, but it is worth it. My number two thing that might not be as obvious is that I'm happy to be bringing back into town Joel Petrakis for his screening of The Alchemist Cookbook. It's his first film since he wrapped up his Animal trilogy, which kicked off with the 8mm junkie werewolf short film Coyote, and then which we have then also shown every of his features since then, which was 8 back several years ago, and then 2 years ago Buzzard. So this year, it premiered at South by Southwest earlier this year. We're bringing Joel back to town. He is someone who's sort of on a track to be someone kind of like a Kevin Everson in the world. He's traveling around to Locarno and Rotterdam and Vienna. You guys just had a near miss at Vienna the other year, I think, actually. He's someone who I really admire and whose last film, I think, in the blurb that we wrote in our program, I described as being a mix of David Lynch, John Cassavetes, and Louis C.K.
The film I'm really excited about that I'm making it mandatory for my class is Raoul Peck's film, I Am Not Your Negro. It's a documentary about James Baldwin, and it's arguably the best film I've ever seen in my life. Oh yeah, and Professor Claudia here, we might collaborate on the film. She's going to introduce it too as well. And I think it's Sunday at 5, November 6th. At the Culver Theater.
Well, I am planning to go to that one. But also a Cambodian film called Exile on Saturday afternoon. I think it's fairly experimental in form, yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
When I was a film student in the mid-70s, one of the first documentary films I saw that really had an impact on me was called Joyce at 34. It was what really was a pioneering film. It was one of the first documentary films where the filmmaker chose themselves, made themselves the subject of the film. It included the birth of Joyce, this woman's, the filmmaker's child, on camera in the film. It was a landmark independent film. It was shot by, not D.A. Pennebaker, but Ricky Leacock.
On Robert Drew's equipment.
Right, I mean, this was like cutting edge, this was the beginning of independent documentary filmmaking and cinema verite in this country. And Joyce Chopra, the filmmaker, was the one single female director of that group. Okay, flash forward to about a year ago, she's moved to Charlottesville. And the festival is very wisely showing one of her films, not Joyce at 34, but one that I haven't seen. And I'm really pissed off because, friends, it's playing opposite my film.
Yeah, no, we're gonna show Joyce at 34 and another one
that's
of her
right,
shorts,
sorry.
and we're gonna show 3 of her
Great.
films actually.
Yeah, she's an amazing person, an amazing filmmaker, another local filmmaker, and I'm only pissed off because it's the
We
typical
had you on
Virginia
another
Film
day.
Festival we run. So, but I would encourage you to, if you can't get tickets to see our film, go see Joyce.
These are the good problems to have, the embarrassment of riches here at Virginia Film Festival. I would recommend Lighthouse Studios, which is our local nonprofit, which teaches kids from 8-year-old to 18-year-old. I taught there all summer, everything from intro to visual effects to advanced narrative and documentary. They are showing a series of shorts in their new building, which they've taken over, the Vinegar Hill Theater. It's beautiful, and they continue to improve it. It's a series of shorts. It is Thursday on opening day at 5:30 p.m., and you will be surprised at how great these shorts are.
Yeah, I can vouch for it. My daughter Skylar has taken 2 programs there and is looking forward to a third. It's an amazing, amazing school that we have right here. Can you join me extending our thanks to all the folks up here, to the team behind them, each of them, and Crown, and the C-VILLE Weekly, and Gold Rock, and the University of Virginia as well. Any final thoughts, Jody?
Just thank you, Coy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.